Hi, my name is Rich Hanlon. I'm your Wild Neighbors Nature Connection Nature Guide. And today I've got a question for you. What do you like about your neighborhood? While you think about that, I'd like to share with you a few things that I like about my neighborhood. My wife Erin and I live in the northern reaches of New York's Adirondack Park in the little community called Duane, New York. One of the things that I like about my community is that we've got some good human neighbors like Adam and Stephanie and Dan and Steve and Carol and others. One of the other things that I like about my community is all of the plant, animal, and fungi neighbors that I get to live into community with here. So I thought today it might be fun and enjoyable to take you for a little walk to meet some of the interesting characters who live along the trail behind our house. So let's take a walk along the path and see what neighbors we can get acquainted with today. Well, come on along as we make our way down into the mixed spruce fir forest. Well, there's a lot of spruce and fir trees here, but there's also a good diversity of other trees. And one of the things that I like about this neighbor, this large trunked white pine. The white pines are pioneers of the forest. They were likely some of the first trees to grow here at some point long ago after most of the trees were cut down. And in the understory of the forest here, we have some beautiful neighbors that go by the name balsam fir. Look at these beautiful needles that stick up. Did you hear that? That's our neighbor, the little red squirrel. Feisty little bugger. Declares itself the rightful owner of the forest. Pretty much every chance it gets. We hear that chatter call a lot. So we have our white pines, our balsam firs, those good tree neighbors. We have our red squirrel neighbors. And we actually have neighbors on all 5 levels of the forest. I'll tell you about that in a moment here. I'm gonna set up my tripod here. Give me a second. Oh, this is fun. I really like this part of our neighborhood. The entire forest floor here is blanketed with these beautiful little white flowers and that look like kind of like little sparklers. This is the plant called Canada Mayflower, and it's just covered this entire hillside. We have some others here. This neighbor here is past blooming, but this is a painted trillium, and I was talking before about we have the 5 layers of the forest in our neighborhood here. We have at the base we have the decomposing leaves and needles in the forest floor. There's some white pine needles, a few balsam fir needles, and some red maple leaves in this mix here. And there's some tiny microorganisms working on good bacteria breaking down these leaves, turning it into new soil. Oh, there's even a couple of baby balsam firs here popping up, actually beneath and among the Canada Mayflower. So we have 2 layers of the forest here in our neighborhood. We have the leaf layer, or the needle layer in this case, where we have decomposing needles and leaves, and there's all kinds of microorganisms living in there. And it's a good habitat for the giant silk moths like the Polyphemus and the Luna moth to go into their pupation stage, into the cocoon, and then later to emerge as beautiful moths. And then we have the next layer of the forest, the herb layer, the plant layer really. We have Canada Mayflower and painted trillium and others. And the next layer up from there is the shrub layer. So let's see if we can, actually we'll just turn this right around. And in this case, the shrub layer is being manifested by some of these larger evergreen wood fern neighbors, and some of these kind of smaller balsam fir neighbors are growing at shrub level. And then the next layer up is the understory level, which there's an understory red maple growing here, some understory balsam firs that are a little bit bigger, and the canopy layer here clearly belongs to the white pine. Really cool and awesome neighbors in my neighborhood. Let's continue on the trail because there's more neighbors to make the acquaintance with. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I like to just slow down, be quiet, and listen and look. There's a neighbor that I'm hearing. I'm not seeing, but I'm hearing. Northern Parula. Northern Parula is singing from the upper level of one of these balsam firs with a kind of a buzzy ascending call with a sharp note at the end going zzz. There it was. See if we can hear it again. I'll point when I hear it. There it is. Northern Parula, one of our neighbors. We designed these trails so we'd have to weave through the forest between the trees. And pretty soon here we're going through, oh, there's a beautiful beetle. I'm not sure what kind of beetle that was. Good day, beetle. Oh, here's some work of our red squirrel neighbors taking apart these pine cones for dinner. There's different kinds of plants. The closer we get down to the bottom here, we have some wild sarsaparilla here. Oh, and here's some that has bloomed. It looks like little firecrackers. Different kind. No. All right. So if the Canada Mayflower looks like a little firecracker, like a sparkler, the blooms of the sarsaparilla look like fireworks. Here's a white pine tree that fell last year, cut right across our path, so we just changed the trajectory of our path. Trying to live in harmony with nature here. Live as part of nature's community, recognizing that our own health is directly intertwined with the health of the ecosystem that we live in. So I think it's a good thing to help nurture a healthy ecosystem, to allow space for all of our different neighbors who live in our neighborhood. And yes, maybe this is not the kind of neighborhood that you're used to thinking about, with streets and sidewalks and stop signs and cars and houses. There are houses here, different kinds of houses, like the house that the ovenbird makes on the floor of the forest, the house that the northern parula makes when it makes a nest for its family using lichens and spider webs that it finds in the branches of the trees here. And this is a special time of year in the kind of early June. There's all sorts of flowers blooming. And there's a special spot over here I want to take you to. We're going to make a sharp left here. And as we kind of push our way through the branches of the balsam fir. It opens up to this mound, and on this mound, I have to take my phone off of my makeshift selfie stick, aka my tripod, to give you a close look at this beautiful neighbor. These are the leaves. They feel very leathery. This is blue bead lily. Let's see if we can take a close look. All right, so here's your blue bead lily. Beautiful yellowish flowers, and it's called blue bead lily because once those flowers turn into berries, they'll be blue. Hence the name, blue bead lily. Beautiful neighbor, and a beautiful, very full and thick patch of it we have here. Feels really, I feel really privileged to have this spot of blue bead lily where we do. And I'm getting bit by some mosquitoes. Ah, yes, the mosquito neighbors. That may be one that you have a difficult time appreciating or relating to. Hopefully you can't relate to, well, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what I want to say about the mosquitoes. Sometimes, yes, I have trouble with them when there are too many. But I know that the parula and the blackburnian warbler neighbors and the yellow-rumped warbler neighbors are all here because the bugs are here in abundance. So I guess that's one reason to give thanks for the mosquitoes. And as we look down at the forest floor here, here's another beautiful plant neighbor. Again, I'm going to have to take my phone off of my makeshift selfie stick to give you a close look at the plant that is called starflower. And you can see the leaves kind of have the star shape around the stem, and right on top is this beautiful, sharply pointed, star-shaped flower. Hence the name, starflower. Going across there. I put some boards in there. That way we have a little bit of a raised spot over where the moss grows thick and tends to be very wet and soggy. We're walking through some more evergreen wood fern here, and we're coming very close to, here's our little creek that runs along the bottom part of our property. As we make our way along, we're coming up to a beautiful patch of bunchberry flowers. Here's the beautiful bunchberry flower neighbors. If you take a close look at this plant, you'll notice that the leaves have these long veins that might remind you of a flowering dogwood tree. Well, guess what? Bunchberry is a relative of the flowering dogwood. It's in the dogwood family. So it has these petals, and the flower part is actually right here in the middle. There's a bunch of little flowers on each plant that you can see there. Let's take a little walk through the bunchberry part of the trail. How special, right? Here's a neighbor that's often easy to overlook. Mushrooms. And when I see them growing on the ground in the forest here, I am reminded that that there's fungal networks. You can see the mosquitoes around my face. I'm reminded that there's fungal networks running all throughout the soil in the forest, connecting the trees so that the trees can share energy and nutrients and even communicate with each other. How amazing is that? When you're in a community, it helps to be connected with your neighbors, and fungi is a really great connector of the forest community, bringing everybody together. Now we're going to start making our way back up the hill, back towards the house where we started this walk. But there's still a few more very special neighbors that I'm excited to share with you today. Another one that's easy to overlook. Sometimes some people have a special eye for it. This is a moss. It's a kind of moss that's called feather moss. There's a lot of different kinds of feather mosses, and you'll notice it has a feather-like shape. It has a central vein and little side branch that's coming out on either side of it. Feather mosses are special because they have this relationship with a bacteria called cyanobacteria, and the Stegonema cyanobacteria that lives alongside the feather moss is able to take nitrogen from the air and bring it into the feather moss's body, which creates an entry point for the very important nutrient, nitrogen, to come into the forest community here. This neighborhood wouldn't be the same without feather mosses. Let's see here. We're coming up to a four-way intersection on the trail here. You might not be able to see it, but I know where it is. Here we'll make our left, head back up towards the top of the hill. Oh, here's some more blue bead lilies, just a few. There's one in bloom. See, now you have an eye for this stuff. The next time you're walking through the spruce fir forest in New York's Adirondack Park. Oh, and here's a different kind of tree. It's an understory tree, striped maple. It gets the nickname moose munch. I haven't seen moose munching on these ones, but apparently they do like to eat them. I have a little bit of a more open area here. There was a fire here a couple years back, and it took some of the trees. There's some tall white pine trees that are dead or dying. It's not a total loss, though, for this neighborhood. Because of the fire, there's been more bark beetle activity in this particular patch of forest, and we've actually seen black-backed woodpeckers a couple of different times working these trees back here. And that is a very special neighbor to see anywhere, but some people come to the Adirondack Park specifically looking for black-backed woodpeckers. So I feel very specially gifted to have them showing up in my part of the Adirondack Park here in my neighborhood. So we're walking through balsam fir understory again. A lot of balsam trees here. The nickname that we have for our house is Balsam Bungalow. Has a good ring to it, don't you think? Now, come into a more open area, and there's my house. But over here is a very special neighbor that is also a trickster. Are you one of those people that likes playing pranks? Playing jokes on your friends and your relatives? Well, take a look at this special neighbor. The pink lady slipper orchid. Now, what's its trick, you might ask? All right, I'll tell you. Well, the pink lady slipper orchid is dependent upon bees coming and visiting from one flower to the next to spread this particular plant's pollen. There is a gift that a lot of flowers provide to pollinating insects for their pollinating services, and it's called nectar. This particular plant does not produce any nectar, but look at this bright pink flower. Looks kind of like a moccasin or a shoe. This is a false advertising. Usually bright colors like that is a sign to pollinators that there's going to be nectar there. So the bee comes in, visits, goes into the side of the flower here. We'll go down inside looking for the nectar. It doesn't find any, so then it has to come back out, and there's a little scraper here. Well, you might not be able to see it. I'm trying to show it to you here. The pollen lives right behind this part of the flower, and this part is pressed very firmly up against this part, and the bee has to come out, and it acts kind of like a comb, and the bee's body will brush up against that comb, and then the bee will get covered with the pollen from the pink lady slipper orchid. Now, sometimes when you try to play a trick on somebody, they wisen up pretty quick. Sometimes they don't fall for it. But the lady slipper orchid is depending upon the bees falling for that trick at least a couple of times, so that way some of the pollen can get shared from one flower to the next. Well, I sure hope that you have enjoyed this brief tour of my neighborhood. Sometimes I think of the entire Adirondack Park as my neighborhood, all 6 million acres of it. The next time you're in the neighborhood, if you're looking for a guided hike, a birding tour, a landscape tour, or some environmental education, give me a call or shoot me an email. I'd love to be your guide. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.